The midday sun beat down on the bustling market square of Thornhaven, its light glinting off the steel hilts of Liam Blackthorn's worn leather scabbard. He wasn't looking for trouble, just a hot meal and a cool drink. The war had ended 2 years prior, but the scars, both visible and hidden, lingered. He ran a hand over the jagged line across his cheek, a constant reminder of the Ravencroft loyalists he'd fought. Now, the city buzzed with a fragile peace, merchants hawking wares, children chasing pigeons, and the low hum of rebuilding. But something felt off. A tension hung in the air, thicker than the summer heat. Liam stopped at a stall overflowing with plump apples, the scent sweet and earthy. As he reached for a particularly rosy one, a glint of gold caught his eye. On the vendor's wrist, a strange mark shimmered, a delicate tracery of gold lines that seemed to pulse with an inner light. Liam had never seen anything like it. He paid for the apple, his gaze lingering on the mark. "Strange tattoo," he commented casually. The vendor flinched, pulling his sleeve down to cover it. "Just a birthmark," he muttered, his eyes darting nervously around the square. Liam shrugged, dismissing it as an oddity. But as he continued through the market, he noticed it again. A fishmonger with a similar mark on her neck, a blacksmith with one peeking out from under his shirt cuff. Each time, the reaction was the same: fear, denial, a hasty attempt to conceal the mark. He found a quiet corner to eat his apple, his mind racing. What did these marks mean? Jansen, in die Aldermere. Were they some kind of secret society? He dismissed the thought. These were ordinary people, not conspirators. Suddenly, a woman's scream ripped through the air. Liam's hand instinctively went to his sword. He pushed through the crowd, following the sound to a small alleyway. A young woman, her face pale and streaked with tears, was huddled on the ground. She clutched her head, muttering incoherently. On her forehead, the same golden mark pulsed brightly. "Get away from her," a gruff voice barked. A burly man, his face contorted with rage, shoved Liam back. "She's cursed, don't touch her." The young woman looked up, her eyes wide with terror. "I saw it," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Fire, death, the grey hand." Liam felt a shiver run down his spine. The grey hand. Whispers of a shadowy organization working for Lord Ravencroft had been circulating for months. He'd dismissed them as rumors, remnants of wartime paranoia. But seeing this woman marked like the others, speaking of the grey hand, he knelt beside her, ignoring the man's protests. "What did he asked gently. Before she could answer, a deep voice boomed from the entrance of the alley. "Leave her be." A tall, thin man in a dark robe stood there, his face obscured by a deep cowl. He carried a simple wooden staff, but his presence radiated an unsettling power. "Brother Callum," the woman whispered, a flicker of hope in her eyes. The robed man approached, his gaze settling on Liam. "You shouldn't involve yourself in things you don't understand," he said, his voice low and resonant. Liam stood his ground. "I think I understand more than you think," he replied, his hand still resting on the hilt of his sword. He glanced at the woman's mark, then at the vendors across the square. He felt a strange tingling sensation in his own hand, a warmth spreading through his palm. He looked down and saw, etched in gold, on the back of his hand, the same intricate mark. Night had fallen over Thornhaven, casting long shadows that danced like phantoms in the flickering lamplight. Liam, Marina, the young woman with the visions, and Brother Callum huddled in the shadows of a deserted warehouse, the scent of salt and fish heavy in the air. The encounter in the alley had been a close call. 2 men in dark cloaks, their faces hidden, had appeared moments after Brother Callum. They hadn't spoken, only moved with a chilling efficiency, their daggers flashing in the dim light. Liam's military training kicked in. He'd drawn his sword, deflecting a blow aimed at Marina, while Brother Callum, surprisingly agile, used his staff to fend off the other attacker. They'd managed to escape, but the message was clear. They were being hunted. "We can't stay here," Liam said, his voice low. "They'll be looking for us." Marina shivered, pulling her cloak tighter around her. The golden mark on her forehead seemed to dim and brighten with her fear. "Where can we go?" she whispered. Brother Callum stroked his beard, his eyes distant. "The Whispering Woods," he said finally. "There's an old path, forgotten by most. It will lead us to sanctuary." Liam had heard tales of the Whispering Woods, a vast ancient forest bordering Thornhaven. It was said to be haunted, a place where the trees whispered secrets and strange creatures lurked in the shadows. He wasn't eager to venture into such a place, but he trusted Brother Callum's judgment. They had little choice. Under the cover of darkness they slipped out of the city, following the winding cobblestone streets to the edge of the woods. The air grew cooler, the sounds of the city fading behind them. The path Brother Callum had mentioned was barely visible, overgrown with tangled vines and thorny bushes. As they moved deeper into the forest, the trees loomed taller, their branches intertwining to form a dense canopy that blocked out the moonlight. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the rustling of leaves and the occasional snap of a twig underfoot. "Do you hear that?" Marina whispered, her eyes wide. Liam listened intently. At first he heard nothing but the wind whispering through the trees. Then he noticed it, a faint murmuring, like voices carried on the breeze. It seemed to come from the trees themselves, a chorus of whispers too low to decipher. He glanced at Brother Callum, who nodded grimly. "The whispers of the woods," he said. "They speak of things long past, of forgotten magic and ancient secrets." As they continued, Liam noticed something else. Animals, deer, rabbits, even a lone wolf, watched them from the shadows, their eyes glowing in the darkness. They didn't seem afraid, but curious, as if drawn to their presence. Liam felt a strange connection to them, a sense of understanding he couldn't explain. He reached out a hand, and a small deer cautiously stepped forward, nuzzling his fingers. He realized then that the tingling in his hand, the warmth he'd felt in the market, was stronger here, resonating with the whispers of the woods. He looked down at the golden mark on his hand. It pulsed with a soft light, mirroring the glow in the animal's eyes. He understood. The mark wasn't a curse, but a gift. A connection to the ancient magic of the woods, the ability to whisper. Suddenly, Marina gasped. "I see them!" she cried, pointing down the path. "The grey hand! They are coming!" The whispers of the woods intensified, turning into a warning growl. The ground vibrated beneath their feet. From the shadows, figures emerged, their cloaks blending with the darkness. The hunt was on again. The grey hand agents, swift and silent as wraiths, closed in. Liam drew his sword, the steel gleaming faintly in the dappled moonlight that filtered through the dense canopy. He'd learned to rely on his instincts during the war, and they screamed at him now. Fight, flee, survive. He pushed Marina and Brother Callum behind him, using the ancient trees as cover. The whispering ability, still nascent and uncertain, allowed him to sense the movements of the animals around them, their fear a mirror of his own. He used their flight paths to predict the flanking maneuvers of their pursuers, a strange instinctive dance of predator-prey. Brother Callum, despite his age, moved with surprising agility, his staff whirling like a dervish, deflecting blows and tripping the attackers. Marina, though terrified, stood her ground, her eyes squeezed shut, muttering under her breath. Suddenly, one of the grey hand agents stumbled, clutching his head and screaming. He collapsed, writhing on the forest floor. Marina opened her eyes, her face pale but resolute. "I saw it," she whispered. "A root, tripping him." Her sightseeing, uncontrolled and fleeting, was becoming a weapon. They fought their way through the undergrowth, Liam's swordsmanship and Brother Callum's unexpected combat skills holding the grey hand at bay. Finally, they broke free of the immediate pursuit, plunging deeper into the heart of the Whispering Woods. Exhausted and battered, they stumbled upon a clearing. In the center stood a crumbling stone structure, overgrown with vines and moss. It was a monastery, long abandoned, its walls bearing the faded remnants of intricate carvings. Sanctuary, Brother Callum gasped, leaning heavily on his staff. This place, it holds the answers. To show. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of dust and decay. Moonlight streamed through holes in the collapsed roof, illuminating rows of empty shelves and crumbling scrolls. Brother Callum led them to a hidden chamber, its walls covered in ancient murals depicting strange rituals and forgotten gods. In the center of the chamber stood a stone pedestal, on which rested a single, leather-bound book. The Chronicles of Aldermere, Brother Callum whispered, his voice reverent. A history of our land, written by those who understood the remnant arts. He opened the brittle pages, revealing elegant script and intricate illustrations. As he read aloud, the story of Aldermere unfolded, a tale of powerful magic, noble bloodlines, and a devastating war that shattered the balance of the world. The book spoke of the Forgotten Crown. Not a literal crown, but a hidden temple city high in the mountains. A place where the remnant arts were born. It was said to hold the key to restoring the lost magic, a power that Lord Ravenscroft desperately craved. Marina, her breathing shallow, interrupted the reading. "Oh, I see him," she whispered, her voice trembling. Ravenscroft. "At the Forgotten Crown, a ritual, blood." Brother Callum slammed the book shut. "He plans to awaken the dormant magic," he said, his voice grim. "But not for the good of Aldermere. He believes only those with pure bloodlines are worthy of its power." Suddenly, a shadow fell across the doorway. A figure stood there, cloaked and hooded, his face hidden in shadow. He spoke, his voice smooth and dangerously familiar. "Indeed, Brother Callum. And you, with your forbidden ending, are a threat to that purity." It was Lord Ravenscroft's right-hand man, Silas, a man Liam had faced on the battlefield. He'd thought him dead. Betrayal stung like a physical blow. "I see you. That unchecked legal near you." Brother Callum had led them into a trap. Silas' betrayal cut deeper than any blade. Brother Callum, his face a mask of regret, didn't deny the accusation. He had led them to this hidden sanctuary, not for safety, but for sacrifice. Ravenscroft believed those with active remnant arts held the key to unlocking a greater dormant power, and he intended to use them, starting with Brother Callum. Liam's hand tightened around his sword hilt. He wouldn't let that happen. He lunged at Silas, his blade a blur in the dim light. Silas, unarmed but unnervingly quick, dodged the blow, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "Foolish boy," he hissed. "You can't defeat me." Marina, despite her fear, stepped forward. "I saw a way out," she whispered, her eyes glazed with another vision. "A hidden passage, behind the pedestal." While Liam held Silas' attention, Brother Callum, with a groan of effort, heaved the heavy stone pedestal aside. A narrow passage, barely wide enough to squeeze through, was revealed. "Go," he urged, shoving Liam and Marina towards the opening. "I'll hold him off. You must reach the Forgotten Crown before Ravenscroft." Liam hesitated, his loyalty warring with the urgency of the situation. He knew Brother Callum couldn't hold Silas for long. He grabbed Marina's hand and pulled her into the passage, the darkness swallowing them whole. The passage opened onto a narrow, treacherous mountain path that snaked upwards towards the towering peaks of Mount Silence. The air grew thin and cold, the wind whipping around them like icy claws. The climb was arduous, the terrain unforgiving. Liam, his body still aching from the earlier fight, pushed himself onward, driven by a mixture of anger and determination. Marina, though physically weaker, showed surprising resilience, her fear replaced by a steely resolve. As they climbed, they talked, sharing their fears and hopes. Liam confessed his unease about the whispering ability, the strange connection to the animals that both fascinated and frightened him. Marina spoke of the burden of her sightseeing, the constant influx of fragmented visions that left her exhausted and emotionally drained. They found solace in their shared experiences, a bond forged in danger and uncertainty. The higher they climbed, the more intense the magical energy around them became. Liam's whispering grew stronger, allowing him to communicate with the mountain eagles that soared overhead, their keen eyes spotting the treacherous paths ahead. Marina's visions became clearer, revealing glimpses of Ravencroft's preparations at the Forgotten Crown, a chilling display of dark rituals and arcane symbols. They reached a high plateau, a desolate expanse of rock and ice. In the distance, shimmering like a mirage, they saw it, the Forgotten Crown. Not a crown, but a city, built into the mountain itself, its towers and temples glowing with an ethereal light. But between them and the city stood a line of figures, cloaked in black, their faces hidden by masks. The Grey Hand, Ravencroft's final defense. And this time there would be no escape. The wind howled across the desolate plateau, a mournful cry that echoed the pounding of Liam's heart. The Grey Hand stood between them and the Forgotten Crown, a silent, menacing wall. He knew they were outnumbered, outmatched. But he also knew they couldn't give up. The fate of Aldermere, the balance of magic itself, rested on their shoulders. He drew his sword, the familiar weight a comfort in his hand. "Stay close," he whispered to Marina, his voice tight with determination. They charged, two figures against an army of shadows. Liam fought with the ferocity of a cornered wolf, his sword flashing in the fading light. He used his whispering to anticipate the Grey Hand's movements, guiding Marina through the chaotic melee. She, in turn, used her sightseeing to warn him of impending attacks, her fragmented visions becoming increasingly precise. Despite their combined efforts, they were slowly being overwhelmed. Liam felt a sharp pain in his side, a Grey Hand dagger finding its mark. He stumbled, his vision blurring. He saw Marina fall, a dark figure looming over her. He roared, a primal sound of rage and despair, and lunged forward, pushing past his limits. Suddenly, a wave of warmth washed over him. His wound began to close, the pain receding. He looked up and saw Brother Callum, his face pale and drawn, standing at the edge of the plateau. He had escaped Silas somehow, and had used his mending to heal Liam, even from a distance. But the effort was clearly taking its toll. "Ah!" Brother Callum's appearance seemed to momentarily disorient the Grey Hand. It was the distraction Liam needed. He rallied his remaining strength, his whispering reaching out to the eagles circling overhead. They responded to his call, swooping down and attacking the Grey Hand from above, their sharp talons and beaks adding to the chaos. They fought their way through the remaining Grey Hand agents, finally reaching the gates of the Forgotten Crown. Inside, the city was a breathtaking sight. Towers of polished stone reached towards the sky, connected by bridges of shimmering crystal. The air hummed with a palpable energy, a symphony of forgotten magic. In the center of the city, on a raised platform, stood Lord Ravencroft, his face illuminated by the eerie glow of a complex magical array. He was chanting in a language Liam didn't understand, his hands raised towards a swirling vortex of energy. He raced towards the platform, dodging the last few remaining Grey Hand guards. Liam confronted Ravencroft, their swords clashing in a shower of sparks. But Ravencroft, empowered by the swirling energy, was stronger than any ordinary man. He disarmed Liam with a flick of his wrist, sending his sword clattering across the stone floor. It was then that Marina stepped forward. Her eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, her sight-seeing reaching its peak. She spoke, her voice clear and strong, reciting a passage from the Chronicles of Aldermere, a counterspell to Ravencroft's ritual. The swirling vortex of energy faltered, its glow dimming. Liam, seeing his opportunity, used his whispering to call upon the energy of the city itself, channeling it through the golden mark on his hand. A bolt of pure energy shot out, striking Ravencroft and shattering the magical array. The forgotten crown pulsed with light, then slowly faded. The dormant magic, instead of being unleashed in a destructive wave, settled back into a state of balance. Ravencroft, stripped of his power, collapsed, his dreams of a pure Aldermere shattered. In the aftermath, magic remained rare in Aldermere, but the fear and prejudice that had surrounded it began to fade. Liam, Marina, and even a weakened Brother Callum were no longer seen as outcasts, but as guardians of a fragile equilibrium. They had chosen cooperation and acceptance over power, and in doing so they had saved not only Aldermere, but the very essence of magic itself.